Deputy Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this House here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen.
Oath or affirmation, announcements by the Speaker.
Honourable members, the Honourable Terence Dialsing, MP, Member for St. Joseph, has requested leave of absence from the sittings of the House during the period March 22nd to the 26th, 2018. And the Honourable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, SC, MP, Member for Separia, and the Honourable Daryl Smith, MP, Member for Diego Martin Central, have requested leave of absence from today's sittings of the House. The leave which the members seek is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate. Petitions, papers.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers in the name of the Minister of Finance. Sorry. Paper number 1, the audited financial statements of the Caribbean Airlines Limited, CAL, for the financial year ended December 31st, 2014. Paper number 2, the report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the National Agricultural Marketing and Development Corporation, NAMDEVCO, for the year ended September 30th, 2010. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee and paper 2 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee. Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy.
Honourable members, the question is that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee and paper 2 referred to the Public Accounts Committee. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have the honour to lay the following papers appearing in my name on the order paper. Firstly, that at number 3, the Criminal Procedure Amendment Rules 2018. That appearing at number 4, the Family Proceedings Amendment Rules 2018. And that appearing at number 5, the Children Court Rules 2018.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. Paper number 6, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, excuse me, to the 12th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2016. Paper number 7, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries to the 14th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2016. with specific reference to the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Reports from committees. Prime Minister's questions. Urgent questions.
Member for Oakwood East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question number 1 to the Minister of National Security. In the public interest, could the Minister inform this House whether the Minister of National Security is involved in a matter in a New York court involving allegations of exploitation, abuse, and fraud?
Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Deputy Speaker will answer this question in 2 parts. First, in the public interest, I held a press conference this morning at about 11:30 at the Ministry of National Security, where I outlined to the media and the public at large my involvement in this matter. Secondly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is a vexatious civil matter in the Court of New York, which I expect to be knocked off by the 4th of April, 2018.
Member for Oakwood East.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question to follow up for point 14. Is the member for point 14 saying because he gave an explanation at a press conference a few hours ago that you cannot give an explanation to the House of Representatives now?
I will not entertain that question. Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Given the cauldron of crime that is taking place in this country, and given the abuse and criminal activity against women, children, and the elderly, having regard to this vexatious civil matter, the question is, do you feel that your office has been compromised as a result of the finding by the court in this matter?
Member for National Security.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, no, my office has not been compromised on vexatious allegations that have been made. Frivolous allegations.
Naprimo.
Tell this Honourable House how many times he has been out of the jurisdiction of Trinidad and Tobago in pursuit of this matter.
Minister of National Security.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have traveled several times. I don't know how, on this matter, on 2 occasions, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Member for Oakwood East. Next question.
Thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Speaker, question to the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs. In the public interest, and with reference to media reports, could the Attorney General indicate whether he has been the recipient of random searches, questioning, and/or interrogation at any international airport since assuming office?
Attorney General.
Yes. Could the Attorney General indicate whether he has been the recipient of questioning, searches, and also this happened when he was carrying a diplomatic passport as Attorney General of this country?
Mr. Deputy Speaker,
AG.
I hold an ordinary passport and a diplomatic passport, and the answer is yes. Would the Attorney General care to indicate at which airport and when he was questioned and interrogated and searched, and whether or not on that occasion
one question.
Could you indicate at which airport and when you were questioned and searched?
AG.
Several
Honourable AG.
airports.
Only 2 questions, member. 2 questions have been asked. So we now go on to question number 3. Oakwood East again. Question
Very
3.
much. Thank you very much. Question number 3, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. Could the Minister confirm whether, in the last 24 hours, the Board of Directors at Petrotrin has selected cabinet-appointed directors to perform the jobs of executive managers at the company?
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. On the 28th of February, Mr. Deputy Speaker, which was the effective date of the resignation of Petrotrin's president, Mr. Fitzroy Haywood, 3 other senior managers, the Vice President, Exploration and Production, the Vice President, Refining and Marketing, and the Vice President, Administration, exited the company on mutually agreeable terms. An interim team was appointed to perform the duties of a transition management team for a maximum period of 6 months, until a new leadership, the recruitment of which will be both locally and internationally, could be recruited. The transition team includes Mr. Anthony Chantak, Mr. Reynold Ajuda Singh, and Mr. Robert Riley, the former president of BPTT. Seeing that Mr. Chantak and Mr. Ajuda Singh were directors of the company, Cabinet on the 8th of March 2018 appointed these 2 gentlemen as executive directors of the company so that they can be authorized to perform executive and managerial functions.
Member for Urupuch East.
Could the Minister indicate whether the 3rd person, Mr. Robert Riley, went through any process of recruitment, interviews, and so on, to be given the job as Head Exploration and Production Division at Petrotrin?
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
The answer is no, because he is internationally acclaimed. BPTT is the largest exploration and production company in Trinidad, and he was the former president of that distinguished company, and he is also a Trinidadian citizen. And he's eminently qualified to perform the job, and it is for a maximum period of 6 months.
Outstanding man. Yeah. Is the
Currently Central.
Is the chairman of Petrotrin an executive chairman?
The answer
Minister
is no.
of Energy.
But you then have...
Member, only 2 questions. Question number 4, member for Shogunas East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Chairman. To the Minister of Education. In view of the recent attack...
One second. Members, it's now 1:42, and again, the outbursts. The outbursts, members on both sides. Member for Couva South. Member for Urupuch West, could you just slightly lean back, please? Member for Couva South, please, the outbursts. On both sides, I'm not tolerating. Shogunas East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. To the Minister of Education, in view of the recent attack on the life of a student from Montrose, Shogunas, could the Minister state what plans have been put in place to increase security in and around schools in Shogunas?
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Ministry of Education has a system in place where security officers are assigned to schools. There are defined protocols for entry into and exit out of schools. All schools are required to follow these protocols. Notwithstanding this, the Ministry of Education is currently conducting a security assessment of all schools with the view of improving security arrangements. The Ministry of Education is also collaborating with officers of the Shogunas Police Station, including the community police, to ensure that greater patrols occur in the vicinity of all schools in the borough of Shogunas. Thank you very much.
That's East.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, could the Honourable Minister indicate by when he expects this security assessment to be completed?
Minister of Education.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, my information is that this assessment will be completed by the end of this academic term. That is by next week. Thank you. That's the information that is before me.
Member for Shogunas East again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Honourable Minister, might you be able to indicate for the comfort of the students and parents, what might this increase or enhance security arrangement to the police be for the Shogunas borough?
Minister of Education.
The increased patrols by the police and security officers will ensure that our schools and our students receive the necessary protection from those persons whose responsibility it is to afford our students that protection. In addition to this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we need to stress the point that a student also has to pay some attention to his own security. And therefore, we have asked our students to travel at least in teams of 2, 3, or 4, and not by themselves when they are on their way home. Thank you.
Question number 5, member for Couva South.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. To the Minister of Works and Transport, could the Minister inform this House of the current status of the lease of the Cabo Star, which services the domestic sea bridge between Port of Spain and Scarborough?
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Works and Transport, Cabinet has agreed to the following: a 6-month extension of the time charter party agreement with Bridgeman Services Group LP for the cargo vessel MV Cabo Star past current term at $21,000 per day on the undermentioned conditions. 1, renewal to be provided 3 months before the completion of the 6-month term. 2, extension term is at $21,000. 2, to authorize the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Transport, to execute the extension of the time charter party agreement on behalf of the Government of Trinidad and Tobago with Bridgeman Services Group LP for the cargo vessel MV Cabo Star. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Could the Minister inform this House of the total cost of this extension of the lease to the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago?
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I said, it is at a cost of $21,000 per day for a 6-month period initially.
Member for Urupuch East.
Thank you very much. In light of the extension of the lease of the Cabo Star, and in relation to the procurement, could the Minister indicate why the Mote report on procurement of the Cabo Star and other vessels has not been made public?
I would not entertain that question, member. I recognize point up here on supplemental.
Yeah.
Proceed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. To the Minister, could the Minister state if this new 6-month contract renewal of $21,000 per day, is this a new rate increase or what was the old US per day?
Leader of the House.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the amount is less than what had been negotiated initially. It is a decrease in the amount. I don't have the exact figure with me now, but it is a decrease in the amount that was initially negotiated. Thank you.
Question number 6. Member for Urupuch East.
Thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Speaker, question number 6 to the Minister of Finance. In light of an announcement yesterday at the post-cabinet press conference, could the Minister indicate the source of funding for the new $500 million terminal building and associated works at the A&R Robinson International Airport?
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is a build-own-lease transfer project. It is private sector finances and a lease back to the government. It is the standard design finance construct, and the lease back is within a 15-year period. The project involves a new modern airport terminal and a new road to the Claude Noel Highway, and all associated works such as parking, new taxiway, loading bridges, etc.
Member for Urupuch East.
Thank you. Could the Minister indicate whether the sum of $500 million includes acquisition of lands for the extension?
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy, Member for Oropouche East, yes, that is included.
Time has expired, members, according to the standing orders.
Questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House, any?
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there are 19 questions for oral answer. We will be answering 13 of those 19 questions. There are no written questions for answer. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we're asking for a 2-week deferral on questions 126, 141, 150, 161, 167, and 168.
Member for Naprima, question 129.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question number 129 to the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. 129?
129.
Should I respond?
Okay, I'll revert to 123 shortly.
Once again, thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs serves as a primary conduit through which first scholarships, training and staff exchange programs offered by foreign governments and international organizations are initially transmitted. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the figures provided do not reflect the totality of all offers of scholarships and training received within the indicated time frame from foreign governments and international organizations. Accordingly, with the aforementioned in mind, I wish to provide the following information in response to the question 129. The number of first scholarships, training, and staff exchange programs offered by foreign governments and multilateral organizations since September 2015 are as follows. Number of first scholarships, 47. Number of training, 421. Number of staff exchanges, 3. The numbers of these offers not accepted. Number of first scholarships applicable to the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, 2. The number of first scholarships not accepted by the said ministry, that is Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, 0. The number of training applicable to the ministry, 39. The number of training not accepted by the ministry, always of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, 24. The number of staff exchanges applicable to the ministry, 0. I go now to the areas of training involved. With respect to the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, the areas covered are international law and law of the sea, trade policy, conservation and economic development, language, culture program, international economics, international weapons convention, trade policies and multilateral negotiations, nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, economic development, international security and sustainability, public diplomacy, multilateral and bilateral diplomacy, e-diplomacy, multilateral negotiations, climate change diplomacy and protocol. Relative to other ministries and departments, we have a list here, accounts in the different areas, environment and renewable energy, rural development, management, business administration, telecommunications and English, public sector management, agriculture, political science, international trade, labor, economic research and development, international statistics, information technology, water resources, among others. The last segment of this question, or rather the response, relates to the reasons for not accepting the offers relevant to the ministry, and the areas cited are late receipt of the offer of training, late submission of applications, language barriers, lack of funding, and non-acceptance of participants by the offering agencies. My thanks to you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Question number 123, member for Mayaro.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question number 123 to the Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries.
Of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm here on time as usual. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the buyer for the mill at Carlson Field has not yet been determined. A negotiating team has been established by the Cabinet to conduct the negotiations with a view to establishing a transaction structure, if possible, for the mill. In response to B, the search for a potential buyer was conducted and managed by PricewaterhouseCoopers. In response to C, 4 offers were received in response to the public advertisement placed in the daily newspapers. In response to D, the bidders were Island Grain Limited, Kaizen Trading Limited, Kasim Khan Transport and Excavation Works, and Trinidad Parboil Limited. In response to E, a final sale price has not been determined. This is the subject of current negotiations. And in response to F, National Flour Mills Limited still has the ownership and control of the mill, and this will continue until the mill is sold. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Member for Mayaro.
Much. Minister, since NFM currently owns, I suspect, a substantial portion of that mill, and it being publicly traded, has there been any consultation with the shareholders with regards to permission for sale?
Minister of Agriculture,
Mr.
Land and
Deputy
Fisheries.
Speaker, the matter of consultation by National Flour Mills with its shareholders is a matter for National Flour Mills. I do not have the information regarding that matter.
Question.
I apologize. I would just like to indicate that question number 167 will be answered today.
67.
167.
Supplemental member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Could the Minister indicate, give me a timeline for the completion of this transaction and negotiation?
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the attempts to sell this mill are about 25 years in the making. And the search for this particular, through this bidding process, has already taken us a year. The negotiations, we are in the middle of the negotiations, and we are hoping that we can conclude this transaction before the end of 2018.
Question 132, member for Kumuto Manzelina.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question number 132 to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in 2012, the Ministry of Works and Transport had an inventory of 486 existing land slips. In 2016, 126 critical land slips from this inventory were prioritized. In 2017, 15 additional land slips were formed, increasing the critical land slip listing to 141. The land slips are as follows. St. George West, 20. Caroni, 17. St. Patrick, 17. St. Andrew, St. David, 17. St. George East, 18. Victoria East, 32. Victoria West, 15. Nariva Mayaro, 5. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the strategy to address these 141 land slips is as follows. 60 land slips have been included in Phase 2 of the Ministry's land slip repair program. In addition, the PR unit is preparing designs for 5 of the land slips. Currently, construction works are being carried out on 1 of these land slips, and works on the other 4 are subject to availability of funds. The Highways Division is also currently undertaking temporary works on 9, and subject to the availability of funds, the ministry plans to expand the program to include the remaining 67 landslips. It is not possible at this time to give the precise details of all 141 critical landslip repair projects in this answer, but further details can be provided in writing upon request. Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Supplemental, Kumutu Manzelina.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Honourable Minister, can the Minister indicate whether Balata Hill Road is one of those on your critical list, please?
Leader of the House.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I do not have that information before me at this time.
Question 133. Member for Kumutu Manzelina.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question 123 to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Leader of the House.
Thank you again, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Under the PURE program, 11 major road rehabilitation projects and 39 secondary road rehabilitation projects have been identified throughout Trinidad as at January 31st, 2018. These works are to be undertaken in fiscal 2017-2018 based on the availability of funds. They are as follows. Caroni, 1. St. George West, 3. Nariva Mayaro, 4. St. Patrick, 2. With regard to secondary road rehabilitation projects, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the areas are, or the districts are as follows. Caroni, 3. St. George West, 20. St. George East, 12. St. Patrick, 1. Victoria East, 1. Victoria West, 2. Currently, the Highways Division is undertaking only routine maintenance on these roads. Major reconstruction and rehabilitation works will be undertaken when funds become available. It is not possible to give the precise details of the road improvement projects in an oral answer. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, once a written request is made, we will give the details in a written answer. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy
Supplemental, Naparima.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Could the Minister state why roads in Naparima have not been repaved, especially the road, Rosha Douglas Road, in which a driver died, a motorist died yesterday trying to avoid a pothole?
Member, the Leader of the House identified it according to the counties. In terms of the specific road, I think mention was made that it can be provided.
So is the member willing to indicate whether the Rosha Douglas Road is
included? Leader of the House.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, at this time I do not have that information.
Would the Minister agree to provide it at another future date?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, once a question is posed, we will provide the information.
But the question is, would you provide it if asked, the Rosha Douglas Road, please?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I said, once a question is posed, we will provide the information.
The question is, would you provide information on Rosha Douglas Road?
Okay, member, 4 questions.
Information on Rosha Douglas Road.
Leader of the House. Yes or no?
As I said, sir, yes.
Kumutu Manzelina, supplemental or? Okay.
Sir, and I would like to also request on Limond Kaiwal to Madam Minister. Thank you for.
Please repeat.
For the information regarding Kaiwal and Limond, I too would like to have written response. Thank you.
Did you say Kaiwal and Limond?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes, for
Certainly.
major road works.
Thank you.
Question 136, member for Urupuch West.
Deputy Speaker, question number 136 to the Minister of Education.
Minister of Education.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, neither administrative nor teaching staff has been affected. The Academy for the Performing Arts stopped teaching entirely at the Southern Academy for Performing Arts, SAPA, at the end of the academic year 2016-2017. The last remaining program at SAPA was the Certificate in Pan and Music Literacy, which was moved to the UTT campus at the National Academy for the Performing Arts, NAPA, to maximize efficiency, but also in part to unify the Pan studio and bring the certificate students closer to their peers in the Bachelor of Fine Arts BFA program. Further, the program coordinator and administrative support for this program are based in Port of Spain. Accordingly, all students, including the 4 affected students in the Certificate in Pan and Music Literacy, would have started or continued the program in the academic year 2017-2018, knowing it would be conducted in Port of Spain. Further, in answer to Part C of the question, the University of Trinidad and Tobago does not provide room, board, transportation, or funding for any of its students except those on special sports scholarships. Thank you.
Chagonas is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In view of the closure, will the Minister of Education indicate whether there are any plans by UTT to utilize the facilities which have been now abandoned from this vacated? Do you have any plans to utilize the Southern Academy for the Performing Arts, that facility, under UTT?
Minister of Education.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, UTT is fully equipped to provide training and all other assistance at various campuses. It does not necessitate the use of the Academy of Performing Arts in South Trinidad. Thank you.
Question 137, Ropuch West.
Question number 137 to the Prime Minister.
Member for Tobago East.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yes, the Sexual Offender Registry was created on December 22nd, 2015.
Member for Ropuch West.
In the event of the persons in the sexual offenders list, are those persons being monitored?
Member for Tobago East.
Yes. Yes, by the Trinidad Tobago Police Service.
Member for
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Could the Honourable Minister say what is the rationale for not making the registry public despite calls from stakeholders to do so, and in keeping with respect to whether or not it will be counterproductive to keep it secret as opposed to be it public? One of those stakeholders was the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes.
Member, the question.
Could the Minister say what is the rationale for not making it public in spite of the recommendations and calls from stakeholders?
Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister.
Thank you. The necessary legislative framework has to be put in place, and the Office of the Attorney General is working on it.
System.
Thank you, Madam Minister. In light of that, could you give us a time frame with respect to how soon can we expect this legislation?
Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister.
The Attorney General's office is working on it, and he would announce it.
So the Minister with the responsibility is saying she has no idea when the legislation will be brought.
Developing that particular legislation, that is the Attorney General's responsibility. Please.
Question 142. Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question number 142 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the common murder rate in the country is indeed a cause for concern. It should be noted, however, that this situation did not arise overnight, and consequently, measures geared to addressing this situation are not expected to yield overnight successes. Nevertheless, Mr. Deputy Speaker, several measures have been implemented by the Ministry of National Security, in particular, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, to address this matter. The overarching mitigating strategy involves a coordinated, multifaceted approach involving the collaborations of all arms of national security. The Ministry continues to pursue greater collaboration among the judiciary as well as with other divisions within the Ministry of National Security, such as the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, Immigration Division, Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service, the Strategic Services Agency. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we also include the preventative branch of the Customs and Excise Divisions to strategize around crime and intelligence. Further, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ministry has increased its focus on violent criminal offenders across all locations in Trinidad and Tobago, placing particular focus on the assessment of violent crime hotspots. At present, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is utilizing all available human and other resources with a clear purpose of ensuring that violent crimes, especially murders, are effectively reduced. There is also a greater focus on crime detection with a greater use of technology in the prevention and detection of crime. For example, by utilizing unmanned aerial vehicles as well as CCTV cameras, the use of body-worn cameras is also being piloted, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Firearms-related matters are high priority, as most murders are committed with this weapon. As a result, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there's an increased focus on firearm offenders, with a high emphasis on prosecution, which leads to conviction. Moreover, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will continue to intensify its effort to remove illegal firearms off the streets and illegal ammunition, and of course narcotics off the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is also pursuing high-quality patrols with a special focus on preventing firearm violence. Mr. Deputy Speaker, some other key measures that have been instituted by the Ministry of National Security to address the high murder rate include the following: the development of a scientific investigation strategy, which will increase collaboration with operation investigative integration between frontline police officers, crime scene investigators, detectives, the Forensic Science Center, and the Strategic Service Agency. Also, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have established a relatively new organized crime and intelligence unit. The mandate of that unit is to dismantle, disrupt, suppress, and prosecute members of organized crime groups, which have, over time, arranged themselves into organized criminal networks. Increase in visible active police presence on the roadways and in communities via foot and mobile patrols has also been instituted. Special emphasis is being placed on the execution of police-centered patrols. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in addition, community engagements and partnerships, continued collaboration between the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and communities via town meetings, station council meetings, and neighborhood watch groups continue to be in existence. High-quality stop-and-search exercises. These activities are characterized by a team of police officers stationed at a strategic location to target suspicious drivers and passengers of vehicles. We've also continued to increase the strength and participation in the police youth clubs as an initiative of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to positively engage youth between the ages of 5 to 25 years in activities that guide them away from engagement in crime and criminal activities. Use of social and traditional media, maximizing the use of these media to raise awareness and sensitivities in the public about personal safety and security. So, Deputy Speaker, additionally, new measures include the establishment of the National Crime Prevention Program, which involves a bottom-up approach involving the 14 municipalities and Tobago. We already had stakeholders consultation with those entities, and they're in the process of developing community crime prevention councils that will bring to bear an interministerial approach to treat with crime in our society. Also, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are establishing a concept called the Eyes Everywhere, which would incorporate cameras throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago to bring information in a position or a place where they can be acted upon. Those are some of the measures, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Hoover, North.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Minister, in light of all of these new initiatives, why does the murder rate continue to increase unabated in Trinidad and Tobago?
Minister of National Security.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can say that it increased similar under their domain, but let me put it in a different way. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there are a number of different reasons for murder in Trinidad and Tobago, and several interventions are required. Different interventions are required to reduce the murder rate. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and other agencies of national security are doing what is required under their remit right now, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I want to urge the opposition to come on board to help in the fight against crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Supplemental, Kufanot.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Minister, what is being done in light of the increase in murders resulting out of domestic violence against our women at this point in time?
I will not entertain that question at this time. Question 143, member for Kufanot.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question number 143 to the Minister of Trade and Industry.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the pool and pool deck were over 50 years old. The surface of the pool was aged, cracked, and deteriorated glass tiles and diamond bright type material finish. The pool was leaking, that is, losing water through hairline cracks on the surface. The pool was shaped in the form of the map of Trinidad and Tobago, and the total perimeter was around 340 feet, with a depth of 16 feet in the deepest area and 2.5 feet in the shallow area. The surface finish of the deck comprised of glass tiles and granulithic stone finish that was aged and outdated. In numerous areas of the deck, the surface was uneven and showed signs of structural failure, thus creating ponding as a result, causing unwanted fungi, mold, mildew, and a total buildup of these. This shortcoming was deemed an HSE issue to guests and users of the area. Further investigation showed the structural integrity of the pool deck was inadequate as there was failure in several sections of the pool deck. Most of the existing plumbing and piping system was aged, rusted, and heavily corroded cast iron pipes. The drainage system within the pool deck was in very poor condition, and a new system had to be designed. Pool equipment like pumps, valves, filters were aged and operating inefficiently, having surpassed their design life, and lighting around the pool was limited. As a result of this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the pool needed to be upgraded. The pool was reshaped and the depth reduced. The pool is now made into 3 parts: a raised jacuzzi, an adult area, and a kiddies pool varying from depths of 3 feet to 4 feet 10 inches. The new surface of the pool is of beadcrete and mosaic tiles. A new pool deck was constructed with colored, stamped, textured, and polished concrete finish. Its pattern design takes the form of a steel pan mural. 3 5-couple cabanas were also constructed on the pool deck. Upgraded water fountain feature with LED lights. All new mechanical, electrical, and plumbing services and equipment such as pumps, piping, valves, electrical wiring, electrical panel, etc. have been installed. There is new lighting within the pool and, as I said, in the pool deck. The pool lighting is LED fiber optic programmable color-changing lighting. The perimeter of the pool deck and cabanas are outfitted with LED lights. A new audio system around the pool deck is camouflaged in the landscaping. The water treatment system in the pool is salt water treatment system as opposed to the traditional chlorine treatment. This type of system is preferred because it is gentler on the eyes and skin of users. It is safer than chlorine in terms of storage and requires less maintenance. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the amount is the total cost of these renovations is $7,618,800.43, VAT exclusive, or $8,571,150.48, VAT inclusive.
Question supplemental? Kufanot.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Minister, can you say at this time the lifespan or durability of the refurbishment works at the pool done?
Leader of the House.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, my pool expertise is quite limited, and I cannot say.
Question 149, member for Princestown.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Honourable Minister, question number 149 to the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Minister of Community Development, Arts and Culture, and Acting Minister of Sports and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, with regard to question 149, the total number and names of the dismissed employees of the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited who have filed legal action against the company since September 30th, 2015 is detailed below. Number 1, Julie Adams. Number 2, Leslie Ferrier Atong. Number 3, Melly Price. Number 4, Adam Monserin.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, to the Honourable Minister, as it relates to dismissals, could the Minister say whether similarly a former personal secretary to the Minister brought industrial action for wrongful dismissal on the grounds of sexual harassment by a high-ranking ministry official?
Member, I will not entertain that question. One, member for Princestown.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question 151 to the Minister of Education.
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As is the case with many other requests for new schools in various areas of Trinidad and Tobago, construction of the Princestown Presbyterian No. 1 Primary School is not included in the Ministry of Education's 2018 Development Program. It should be noted that the former government, when demitted office, there were a number of incomplete and poorly managed school building projects requiring billions of dollars to complete. Thank you.
Supplemental, member for Princestown.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, could the Honourable Minister say whether it is true or not that in May 2017 he met in this Parliament with representatives of the PTA and staff at Princestown No. 1 and assured that construction will start in 2017 after the Minister authorized the demolition of the school prior to the conversation? Or is this sabotage of his memory?
Member, what is the question exactly?
Does the Minister recall giving the assurance that he did in this Parliament in May 2017 to the PTA and the staff of the school?
Thank you. Minister of Education.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I stated just now that this present government found itself in a position where we had to deal with 107 incomplete schools, and in many cases, without the necessary approvals, either from regional corporations or without the identification of the required funds. In the case of many of these schools, contractors were not paid or any assessment of the work done to determine value for money. And as a result, I am unable to give any assurance with respect to the construction of the Presbyterian No. 1 primary school. These are new schools, and therefore they require additional funding.
Member for Princeton.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the Honourable Minister admitting that he was dishonest to the PTA and members of staff with respect to Princeton No. 1 school?
Thank you. Question 162, member for Faizabad.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Chief Whip.
On behalf of the member for Faizabad, question number 162 to the Minister of Labour and Small Enterprise Development.
Minister of Labour and Small Enterprises Development.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to share information, although the Member for Parliament is not present to receive it personally. The government of Trinidad and Tobago is of the belief that the contributions of outstanding labor leaders and stalwarts, such as Tubal Uriah Buzz Butler, Adrian Kohler Rienzi, Clotilde Walcott, and George Weeks, to name a few, who struggled to improve the lives of thousands of workers in Trinidad and Tobago and have shaped the labor history and the nature of current industrial and employment relations in this country, should be properly acknowledged. Mr. Deputy Speaker, from my understanding, the concept of a Labor Heroes Museum in Faizabad was born out of an absence of archival material related to the history of the labor movement in Trinidad and Tobago. I have been informed that it was meant to serve as a permanent mechanism to share information on and recognize the contributions of labor leaders, past and present, who literally laid the foundation for the realization of decent work for all workers in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is my understanding that under the previous administration, some preliminary works commenced on this project, including the signing of a site access agreement between the Ministry and Trintopec. The conduct of geographical and topographical surveys and fencing works were done. However, given the financial situation which this current government met when it took office in September 2015, and the continuing economic challenges to date, the project to establish a Labor Heroes Museum has been placed on hold at this time. With the limited financial resources available to us, we are focusing attention on some current pressing issues facing the labor landscape, such as unemployment, retrenchment, labor legislation reform, and establishing a framework of rights and responsibilities in the workplace. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it should be noted that this decision does not negate the value and importance of the labor movement in Trinidad and Tobago and the immense contribution of our great labor leaders. In fact, the Minister of Labour and Small Enterprise Development has engaged in cost-effective ways to highlight various aspects of the contribution of labor heroes and the labor movement generally in Trinidad and Tobago. This includes the dissemination of information on the role and contribution of our great labor leaders via radio and television interviews, publications in the daily newspapers, and at the annual Labor Day celebrations held in Faizabad. Mr. Deputy Speaker, more significantly, a recent initiative by the Ministry of Labour and Small Enterprise Development to highlight the significant contributions made by our labor heroes is our Labor League project. This project was conceptualized our annual Labor Day celebration activities under the theme, The Pioneers of the Labor Movement in 2016. Like the Justice League, the Labor League is a team of superhuman characters who, by virtue of their contributions, revolutionized the labor landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. The concept entails placing an image and brief history of these labor superheroes and their specific superheroes' power on flashcards, which are to be used as teaching aids in our schools.
Members, at this time, the time has expired for oral answers, oral questions and answers.
Speaker, I just want to draw your attention to 2910 in the standing orders, please.
2910. Okay, honorable members, as a result of Standing Order 2910, the Chief Whip has asked that the questions that were not answered today be tabled at our next sitting of the House. For answered, yeah, for oral answered at the next sitting. On what? With regards to this same standing order? Go ahead.
Standing order, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it said this must be done before the time of expiration, not after.
No.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Given what Barrett Arias said, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we would have been very willing to give the answers orally. But if Barrett Arias prefers that we give them in writing in accordance with the first part of Standing Order 2910, we will do that. You all need to communicate with each other. But in the interest of comity, we will, in fact, give the answers orally on the next occasion, as was asked by point of pay. You're very welcome. Mr. Deputy Speaker, that was not why I rose, but I could not miss that opportunity. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would like to be given the opportunity to correct something that was said in response to the oral question posed to the Minister of Finance. It's a very brief correction. The urgent question to the Minister of Finance. I'm asking, yes, I just want to correct something. Oropuch, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the
question
member
number
for
6.
Oropuch East asked the question.
Yes, I give leave. Question number 6.
Thank you very kindly.
Was from the member of Oropuch East to the Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Entitled to supplemental on your correction.
Member, I have given leave. I have given leave. Proceed.
No, but
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In answer to the supplemental, I indicated that the 500 million included money for acquisition. It does not.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance.
Member for point of pay.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I hereby seek your leave to move the adjournment of the House today under Standing Order 17 for the purpose of discussing a definite matter of urgent public importance, namely the urgent need for the government and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to take immediate steps legislatively and administratively to ensure the protection of our women and girls who are victims of domestic violence. The matter is definite because it pertains specifically to the failure of the government and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to address the continued loss of lives of our citizens who are victims of domestic violence. The matter is urgent because over the past 2 weeks, we have, as a country, experienced unprecedented loss of life of victims of domestic violence. It is urgent because victims need help immediately and urgently, and the failure of the police service to act upon reports of domestic violence cannot be allowed to continue. The matter is of public importance because they are victims of domestic violence throughout Trinidad and Tobago whose lives are at risk daily, and this is a national issue that affects the safety and security of all our citizens. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Honourable members, while this is indeed an important issue, I am not satisfied that the matter qualifies under this particular standing order. Members, I advise that the member pursue this matter under Standing Order 16.
Statements by ministers, personal explanations, introduction of bills. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House unmoved by a minister. Public business, private members' business, motions.
Honourable members, the debate on the following motion, which was in progress when the House adjourned on Friday, February 23, 2018, will be resumed. Be it resolved that this House take note of the failure of the government to present a viable plan to diversify the economy and to place Trinidad and Tobago on the path of sustainable growth. Member for Couva North, who was on her feet at the time, you have 15 additional minutes and you can proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. First of all, Deputy Speaker, let me take this opportunity to welcome the representatives from different associations for persons living with disabilities to the chamber here this afternoon. And let me also say, whilst I am on my legs debating this motion on diversification and the failure of the government to diversify the economy, to remind the Honourable House that during our tenure, we signed on to the United Nations Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which, if incorporated into our tourism strategic plan, will open up an entirely new market for tourism here in TNT. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as it stands, the situation with our tourism sector has continued down a slippery slope since last we debated this motion. We have seen a study done by the Trinidad Hotels, Restaurant and Tourism Association, which showed that under this government and the Ministry of Tourism, that tourist arrivals hit an all-time low in 2017 with 394,650 arrivals to TNT. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is not to be taken lightly, an all-time low during their tenure in 2017. In addition to this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have also seen from media reports that the Tobago Chamber of Commerce has reported a $700 million loss since the collapse of the sea and air bridge of last year, April.
It's a shame.
And therefore, I need to ask, Mr. Deputy Speaker, on behalf of the Tobago Business Chamber, whether or not the government can look into a bailout or waive mortgage fees for these businesses that have lost money and now the banks are looking to move in on them for being unable to meet their payments. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what is the role and function of any Minister of Government? As far as I see it, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is to foster an environment of collaboration and participation using ministry resources to move the people of a particular country forward. With the Ministry of Tourism, who happens also to be the Member of Parliament for Tobago West, we have not seen this happening with our tourism stakeholder sector. Instead, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have seen a Minister of Tourism who has been traveling quite a lot, and I want to know the cost of her travels thus far, and to all of these tourism world conferences, and whose only highlights after participation was a $59,000 roaming bill, a blame game on the THA as key stakeholders were not invited to the Berlin Tourism Conference, and the labeling of Tobago businessmen as fake in her usual style of arrogance and high-handedness.
Overruled.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me get on to a little bit of facts at this point in time. We live in a region here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, where most of the economies are based on revenues from the tourism sector. Jamaica have seen increases in visitor arrivals. Jamaica had the highest ever in 2017, with 4.3 million people visiting and generating revenues up to US $3 billion. So whilst Jamaica had the highest number of tourists coming to their island, Trinidad and Tobago had the lowest ever. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we don't need to look far for a model because the Jamaican model is right here in the region. They have incorporated proper marketing destination strategies, supported by both large and small hotel operations, and cultivated its tourism product into a unique one. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what is it that the tourists of today is looking for? They want to come and stay within the communities. They want to eat our local food, experience local culture and practices. Most of Jamaica's bookings in 2017 were small bed and breakfasts, guest houses, and entire homes. Jamaica is a prime destination for a new emerging market, especially with the rise of the American online marketplace and hospitality service Airbnb, which facilitates the ease of homeowners globally leasing or renting their properties to tourists. And because of Jamaica adopting this service, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Jamaica has seen a 55,000 increase tourist bookings via Airbnb in 2017. So hotel bookings actually went down, and the bookings of entire homes and small bed and breakfast guest houses increased. And it makes one wonder and ask the question, are we really going down the right path to accommodate and encourage Sandals Hotel in Tobago at this point in time where we have an alternative and a new way of marketing and also accommodating tourists to the Caribbean region? Because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, one would know when we travel on vacation, we carry our entire families. And sometimes it ends up being costly with respect to renting exclusive hotels like Sandals, where it would have been cheaper, or it is cheaper, to rent entire homes. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in addition to that, why does the Tobago House of Assembly insist on beating an old horse, which is that of the Tobago Jazz Festival? This year, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the event will cost $7 million. And according to the Minister of Finance, the use of the Liat airline for the month of April will cost the taxpayers $4.3 million, which gives us a budget for just Tobago Jazz in the month of April, $11.3 million so far. Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I continue to say it ad nauseum, in and out of the Parliament, in the Parliament, a JSC recommended that this festival be handed over to the private sector to generate revenues on behalf of the people of Tobago. And here again, we have it for another year running. The THA's control of running the Tobago Jazz Festival at a cost of $7 million. And I also need to ask whoever is responding after me, does this cost include the payment to the guest artists also? Or is it an additional cost to the guest artists who are coming in to perform at the Tobago Jazz Festival? Why do we continue to waste funds for little or no returns to the people of Tobago? Mr. Deputy Speaker, they talk about waste, corruption, and mismanagement, but they are far better at wasting and engaging in corruption of funds of taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. They have no new plan for tourism in Tobago, except that for the Sandals International Hotel, which I spoke about earlier on. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it must not go unsaid in this House that our Caribbean partners and fellow island countrymen are experiencing problems with respect to the management of Sandals and the taking out of taxes and concessions as incentives that governments, regional governments, are not benefiting from. And again, I would make reference to that of Antigua and Prime Minister Gaston Brown and what is taking place across there. And therefore, we need to be very, very cognizant of what is taking place in the Caribbean region, and also very cognizant with the evolution of tourism and all about our tourism product and how it is marketed here within the region to attract tourists to our country. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to say something. They have a new mantra, the government: stay out of Tobago business. And this afternoon, I want to tell them that they feel that Tobago is P&M country. And so, because they feel that Tobago is P&M country, that they should be allowed to abuse and ill-treat Tobagonians. But they cannot and they will not stop me or the opposition from speaking on behalf of Tobago people. They cannot and they will not do that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I'll tell you why. Because first and foremost, we are all patriots across on this side. And secondly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are all elected members of Parliament. And the Tobago issue is a national issue. And we are elected to this House to speak on national issues of interest on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, they could get up and jump high, they could jump low, they could say Tobago, this, that, whatever. I am a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. We are Trinbagonians. We are fifth generation Trinbagonians. And therefore, we are not going to be stopped on speaking on behalf of Tobago and Tobago people. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I also want to say that it is extremely unfair as to how Tobago people are being taken for granted and being abused. The THA, with its current Chief Secretary, Mr. Kelvin Charles, is like the Punisher, and I'll explain why. The THA is the biggest employer in Tobago, and therefore Tobagonians are very afraid to come out and speak out against the abuse and ill treatment of Tobago people. And therefore, quietly, they are biding their time, and they will eventually show the current government and the current management of the THA what it's really like when election time come around. They're going to vote them out. Mr. Deputy Speaker, now we have a new development.
Silence.
We have a new development, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Just yesterday, the Minister of Finance would have made an announcement with respect to the Tobago Airport costing $500 million exclusive of the land acquisition. Again, I am to ask, what is the projected cost of land acquisition? I'm sure that there's a plan line somewhere. Is it that this project is going to run up to billions of dollars? Anticipated billions of dollars? We need to know from now. The government and the THA needs to come clear. They need to become transparent and accountable to the people of Tobago especially. And we, as the opposition and the watchdog over the government, will continue to monitor this project with a very keen interest. We will not allow in years gone by what happened to Tobago to continue to happen in terms of wastage of funds and corruption of funds with respect to macro projects taking place in Tobago under the management of the THA. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in addition to that, I must say that this afternoon it is very disheartening to see yet again that I think the ferry service, the TNT Spirit, has been again out of service and incapable of servicing the people and the sea bridge between Tobago and Trinidad. And it is very unpatriotic of the government to come here and sit on a Friday. Very unpatriotic to come and sit on a Friday and not try to find solutions and come here and try to pull wool over people that are using Parliament at the time that Parliament has allotted to us, whilst Tobago people suffer.
Member, you have 1 more minute.
Yes, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in a nutshell, I would like to say that this government has failed at diversifying the economy. They have failed at bringing a new plan, a new strategy. They have failed at governance in 2.5 years. And clearly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we don't expect much more for their next 2.5 years in government. Thank you very much.
I recognize the member for Tobago East.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was hoping to contribute later on, but I cannot sit here as a true Tobagonian and not respond. The member for Couva North indicated that they on this other side are patriots. They hold Trinidad and Tobago dearly to their heart. Yet at every opportunity, they badmouth this country. How can we possibly attract people to destination Trinidad and Tobago when you constantly put negative out there? How can we? Couva North talks about Tobagonians suffering. I don't visit Tobago by boat for a weekend. I live in Tobago. And nobody in Tobago suffering. Get that right. When we go to the groceries, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Members, hold on. Members, Princestown, members. Members, again, each member will have the opportunity to enter the debate. Rest assured. But I'm not going to tolerate any outbursts across the floor. I am not going to tolerate it. Right? Each member will have the opportunity and they will be given their chance. I'm not going to tolerate any outbursts. I would like to hear the discourse of the member. So kindly proceed. Member for Tobago East.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, nobody in Tobago is suffering in a manner.
Have your seat. You can have your seat, member. Have your seat. Again, I am not going to tolerate it this afternoon.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, nobody in Tobago is suffering in a manner that they allege. Every time the member for Couva North talks, she says that Tobagonians don't have food, they don't bring in food. We have something called Village Harvest. Almost every weekend, Tobagonians freely feed thousands of people. Nobody in Tobago is suffering for food. Mr. Deputy Speaker, they say that the sea bridge has collapsed and we can't get cargo to Tobago, yet the cargo that travels almost every day. Not full to capacity, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yes, there's a problem with taking passengers across, but cargo is getting to Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Passengers are getting to Tobago. Yes, we have a problem with the ferry, but Carl has stepped up to the plate and people are getting to Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, tourism is important to our economy in Tobago. So I wouldn't let Couva South, Couva North, or Airport East, or anybody badmouth destination Tobago and not defend. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to talk about community tourism in Tobago. When people were complaining that there was low arrivals in Tobago, the beautiful, serene, calm.
Members, have a seat. Member for Dabadeo Mera and member for Couva South. That crosstalk is also included, and I'm not tolerating it. Proceed, member.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I hope I'm going to get some extra time, right? Please, thanks. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I was saying, the beautiful, serene, calm village of Castara in Tobago East has a thriving tourism sector. The member for Couva North spoke about Jamaica and the small hotels and guest houses and bed and breakfast. That is how Castara is thriving. Over the carnival period, the Castara Tourism Association spoke of over 85% occupancy. You know where the tourists were coming from? Europe, Britain, direct to Tobago, via Condor coming out of Germany and British Airways coming out of UK. The Virgin comes as well, so we have people coming. The tourism sector in Tobago, despite the challenges, is continuing to thrive and will continue to thrive because Tobagonians have bought into the concept of community tourism and nurtured that particular product. Mr. Deputy Speaker, last week I went away to represent Trinidad and Tobago at the Commission on the Status of Women. And when I was going, I was able to go to Louis Vuitton and purchase chocolate bars crafted with beignet in it. So they put a spin on our beignet and made chocolate. And I was able to take that out to the mission to show what we are producing in Tobago East and encourage people to come and taste a bit of Tobago East. You know what that is? That is also building on our tourism sector. You know why? Because we're building festival tourism through our food. We have the Blue Food Festival in Tobago. We have the fish tournaments in Tobago. We have the Cycle Classic in Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So we're not only looking at community tourism, we're looking at sport tourism, festival tourism. Yes, the Jazz Festival may have some issues, but it's a product that is worth developing. So Couva North, if you really love the people of Tobago, start changing your language. Stop calling Dumanguba my people. I live in Tobago. I know our reality. I grew up in the East. I still live in the East. I go and I buy my quicks and my corned beef like everybody else. And I get it easily. And any supermarket I go to, in the East or the West, I could get what I want. So stop passing your mouth on the people of Tobago. And stop passing your mouth over this nation. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in terms of further diversifying the economy, I want to talk about the quarry in Stolly Park. And most of the things I'll speak about are based within Tobago East. The quarry in Stolly Park was under full management of the Tobago House of Assembly. It wasn't performing to its full capacity. They made a strategic move to establish a special purpose company. And that quarry is working 24/7. When I speak going home before, you will see truckers lined up for hours waiting for material. Now when you pass the Stolly Park quarry, you're not seeing truckers waiting because why? It's under new management. Workers actually working honestly and earnestly. And that particular product that comes out of that quarry is of world-class quality. We could export that and further enhance the Tobago economy and by extension the national economy. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this government would have put things in place to facilitate the development of agriculture. And Tobago and Trinidad is capitalizing on that. Recently, there was a training in Tobago in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture and the FAO, where they were showing Tobagoanians how to use the root crop called cassava and look at the value chain in that root crop called cassava. And when I saw the workshop and the reports on it, I smiled. Because when I worked at community development, we went on a mission to Guadeloupe. And while we were in Guadeloupe, there was a call for cassava mash to help make a delicacy that they have. You could have it sweet or savory. And when we came back to Tobago, report from that mission, we said to the Tobago House of Assembly, there's an opportunity to explore the Guadeloupe market in terms of exporting cassava, processed cassava. And I'm happy to see steps are being taken to move us along that line. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, that could only happen because of the incentives and the policies put in place by this government, supported by the Tobago House of Assembly. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to speak to the creative industries. They said nothing is happening, we aren't doing anything. We are nurturing the creative industry, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I want to talk to fashion in particular. In Tobago, we have been working to build the capacity of our fashion designers and persons in the fashion industry. Every year, year on year, we see the growth of fashion coda in Tobago. People coming from locally, people coming from internationally to fashion coda. Year on year, we see people going to Villa Bean to be a part of Leve. Leve isn't a Caribbean thing, no, it's international. So we are working to boost the fashion industry in Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in terms of art and craft, we have seen where the teacher would provide training for Tobagonians to be able to take what comes as a natural hobby and monetize it. People are now looking to export their handcrafted jewelry. How dare you say this government isn't working to build the people of Trinidad and Tobago, diversify our economy? How dare you? Mr. Deputy Speaker, if we really claim that we are patriots and we are operating for people first and country first, then there are times that we will speak the truth regardless, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We want to look for every and any opportunity to build, break down, and bad talk just to gain petty political points. If we are to move Trinidad and Tobago together, if we are to transform our economy together, if we are to diversify our economy to help us move in a new direction, we have to do it together, and it starts with the way we speak. I strongly believe in karma, but you put out into the environment, but every time you all talk, it's about doom and gloom and suffering. I am not going to sit in this honorable house and allow you all to pass it over my people, my nation anymore. Yes, that is why you have to change your language. Mr. Deputy Speaker, recently, the Minister of Trade and Industry would have launched a live music district that also falls in line with using the creative industries to help to diversify our economy. Mr. Deputy Speaker, yes, we have persons in Trinidad and Tobago who are into music, drama, and dance. And there's opportunities for us to really harness that and move out into film. I was so proud when I saw for the first time Winston Duke on television. It wasn't on Black Panther, you know. It was looking at my little Tobago boy on Law and Order, a show I love. And just looking at him from Law and Order, that sort of joy I felt when I saw that other people who grew up around Winston now into film and being motivated to go further into film. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are working with a plan. We don't act with VAPs. We don't act helter-skelter. We developed a strategic plan called Vision 2030. It outlines a program to transform Trinidad and Tobago in terms of our economy and in terms of our social framework. I strongly believe, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if we all work together to ensure the various pillars under Vision 2030 are implemented effectively and efficiently, there will be meaningful change, not only to the economy, but to the lives of the people in Tobago and Trinidad. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I don't intend to be long, but as I close, I want to remind the people of Tobago that we are people born out of a struggle, but we are people, we are resilient. So regardless of what we may be going through at this time, we know that tomorrow is always a better day because Tobagonians don't give up. Tobagonians find ways to make it work. And we'll continue to find ways to make it work. And when Tobago starts to thrive and our economy starts to bloom, Tobago, just as the loving sister we always will be, would reach out a hand to all of us here in Trinidad as well. I want to say that to you. Tobagonians, your government is working for you. We inherited a lot that we had to fix, and we are working diligently to fix it. We are going to work, but we are not going to compromise our integrity and our values. We are going to work for the people of Trinidad and Tobago in a manner that you will see at the end, yes, it must have been tough, but they did it well. They did it honestly, and they made us proud. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank you.
I recognize the member for Naparima.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Chairman. I rise to contribute to this motion, and I wish, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I wish to do so as a patriotic son of Trinidad and Tobago. And nobody would question my citizenship either in Trinidad or in Tobago. I am from Trinidad and Tobago.
Member for Tobago East. Thank you. Member.
I had to listen to the member for Tobago East. And I had to wonder whether my sense of realism had given way when I heard her said, nobody in Tobago is suffering. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I could refer to Mr. John Cruikshank, President of the Tobago Chamber of Tourism and Industry and Commerce, and he has said Tobagonians are fed up. This is not Rodney Child patriot talking. This is a Tobagonian representing...
Member, again, member for Tobago East, I know of probably how you're feeling, but not today. Naparima, continue.
Thank you. Not only did Mr. John Cruikshank say so, but Mr. Watson Duke, the minority leader, he said Tobagonians are suffering. And he says government has a question to answer relating to Cabo Star. But I could go to the Trinidad Guardian, dated the Friday, June 2nd. It says Tobagonians call for the PM to come and experience their problems. It says Prime Minister, and I quote, Dr. Keith Rowley needs to come and deal with the situation, leaving people of Trinidad and Tobago stranded at either the Port of Spain or Scarborough Ferry Terminal. And if it goes down to quote a passenger, Miss Mary Cadet, she told reporters the ongoing inconsistency with the water taxi service was frustrating both mentally and financially for passengers. Which world is the member for Tobago East living in? But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member for Tobago East belongs to a party that is in denial, a party that does not understand that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago are experiencing the worst form of governance ever in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. And in fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, never in the history of Trinidad and Tobago has so much damage, social, political, and economic, been effected on so many by so few in such a short time of 30 months. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are here not to highlight the suffering of our fellow citizens in Tobago, much as we have to, because we are here to present alternative policies and better policies to improve the lives of all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. But we are here to discuss the failure of this government to encourage investments, create jobs, and diversify the economy. And before I get into my presentation, I must congratulate the Member of Parliament for Chaguanas East for having the insight to highlight a critical problem facing the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. My friend and colleague from Chaguanas East is a visionary. He is a performer with an excellent and unprecedented record in the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training. Best summed up in his refrain, from cutting cane to flying plane, which speaks to the visionary heights he took the tertiary sector and, by extension, the next generation of leaders of Trinidad and Tobago. And he did this under the leadership and guidance of the member for Siparia, who I'm proud to say will be the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the motion speaks, be it resolved, that this House take note of the failure of government to present a viable plan to diversify the economy and to place Trinidad and Tobago on the path to sustainable growth. And in my preparation, I went to the budget statement delivered by the Honorable Colm Imbert, Minister of Finance, on the 2nd of October 2017, in which he spoke in 19 pages, took him 19 pages, to talk about that government's policies towards in respect of the diversification of the economy. And I did make the point then, and I make the point now, that this could have been done in 1 page instead of 19 pages. And he needs, as I said before, to acquaint himself with the book. What's the name of the book, my friend? The First Aid in English, which by Angus MacGyver, that has an excellent chapter on Précis. So it is nice, 19 pages, he spoke about the diversification of our economy. And I will show how there's a paucity of vision and more so a lack of performance capability on that side. He spoke about a number of areas: export promotion in his diversification, business development incentive program. He spoke about agriculture, he spoke about yachting, and he spoke about creative industries. And when he spoke about, I'll do it seriatim, when he spoke about export promotion, he said, however, and I quote, with your permission, one of the major challenges for exporters at this time is access to foreign exchange for raw materials and other essential inputs in manufacturing. And he went on, to address this problem, we are establishing a facility to allow eligible exporters to access foreign exchange. And in furtherance of this objective, it goes on, we will request the central bank to license the Exim Bank as a dealer in foreign exchange and give the Exim Bank the responsibility to allocate to exporters in the first instance. And it went on to say the facility would be capitalized at US $100 million and will be available in fiscal 2018.
When you announce that?
He announced that on the October 2017. Today, no one, no manufacturer has accessed that 100 million US. It is not in place. And further, the TTMA has not received any communication regarding that. So this is a lot of old talk. This is a lot of song and fury signifying nothing. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Exim Bank's mission is to provide a wide range of attractive and effective trade finance products to the export sector to help them assist our country in getting foreign exchange. Not one thing has been done after 5 months. We are approaching the half mid-year review, and nothing has happened. But the second point, that is not all. The second point he raised, he talked about business development incentive program. Here talk, here nice talk to fool us, and they follow talk on that side. A quote, recognizing the constraints that face small business and borrowing from experiences in other countries, and the government will continue to expand and simplify and expedite the provision of concessionary loans and loan guarantees through state enterprises. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the body that is responsible for disbursing loans to small businesses in Trinidad and Tobago is NEDCO. And we just had NEDCO. We had, and this was an article on the 1st February 2018, the company that is supposed to give effect to this articulation of a great idea by the Minister of Finance, they laid off staff. What? And when you read the article, you see the date of this article is the Thursday, 1st February 2018. Just a few weeks ago. And it says, and I quote, NEDCO also cannot meet its operating costs, which represent 113% of the total active loan portfolio. What a waste of time, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The third area he spoke about is agriculture in terms of diversification.
Member, again, he used the proper...
Right, the Minister of Finance. The member for Diego Martin Ortiz. He talked in glowing terms to fool us and to fool the people of Trinidad and Tobago of his sudden concern for agriculture. And I quote him again, and I want to show that he is doing nothing. He says, and it was Madam Speaker, I guess it was not you, he said, farming knowledge and interest in farming are being promoted through a plethora of initiatives during the last fiscal year. And here what he said, talked about. Here, 482,100 nursery plants and planting material for crops such as cocoa, citrus, and other fruits. Mr. Deputy Speaker, he could not be making this because the only performance to date is the St. Augustine Nursery, which has been summarily assigned for houses and not for nursery plants and planting material. He also said in terms of agriculture, the CPEP, as the Community Environment Protection and Enhancement Program, will participate in agriculture and targeted areas of reforestation, preservation, planting, and rejuvenation of terrain. The only action that I know has taken place in CPEP is the firing of a number of workers, CPEP workers, and the seizure of assets. Non-performance in agriculture. But he went on to say in agriculture, he's going to make soft loans available to small businesses. And he said, accordingly, in similar fashion to our small business incentive program.
Again, members, when identifying the particular person you're referring to, there's a particular way. Right? This is for all members. Honorable member, minister, as the case may be.
I apologize.
Okay, members?
I apologize. The Minister of Finance said, and I quote, in similar fashion to our small business incentive program, we shall establish an agricultural financial support program with grants for new and existing farmers of up to $100,000. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I spoke yesterday to Mr. Babulal, who is the Vice President of the Irie Village and Food Crop Association, comprising 40 members, farmers from Princestown to Williamsville, and they have not received a single cent of this 100,000 facility. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, I also spoke to the Table and Pineapple Association, perhaps one of the largest producers of pineapple in Trinidad and Tobago, and I think they were highlighted in Sesame Street. No member, Mr. Deputy Speaker, has accessed this $100,000. So it is old talk and no action. It reminds me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of the Bible from which I draw inspiration. James 2, verse 14. Because I want to have faith in that government that they could deliver and diversify this economy for my children and grandchildren. But the Bible says, what use is it, my brethren, if a man says he has faith, but he has no works? Amen. They have no works. They cannot perform. And performance beats old talk anytime. But the Minister of Finance also told us about yachting. He could talk. The Minister of Finance could talk a talk. They could talk a talk. But on that side, they cannot walk the talk. And I think the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago are waking up to the realization that they were subject to a con job in September 2015. But as I always say metaphorically, I warned them. I warned them. I warned them. I spake unto the multitude. And I told them the suffering that will befall them. Yes. And all they could do on that side is say, spin the wheel. But they spin the wheel, every prediction has come to pass. Yes, and I will call myself not the son of a prophet, not the son of the grandson of a prophet, but a prophet, yes, because I prophesied. Let's look at yachting. The Minister of Finance said, he said he's going to develop yachting-specific legislation to provide a clear distinction. I seek your protection.
Members, again, as the Speaker, I will rule accordingly. Right? On both sides, members are making their various comments. And as the Speaker, I will determine accordingly as we go along. All right? So, member, proceed.
Thank you for your protection, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In respect of yachting, the Minister of Finance said, and I quote in his budget address in October last year, he says we are going to develop yachting-specific legislation to provide a clear distinction from commercial maritime laws and to provide regulations and operating procedures through engagement of the relevant stakeholders. Mr. Deputy Speaker, nothing has happened in that regard. He also talked about introducing a single harmonized form which will reduce entry and departure times for cruisers visiting Trinidad and Tobago. I've spoken to some of the people involved in the yachting industry, and they said absolutely nothing has been done. We have a government of talk and not a government of performance. He talked about developing a comprehensive marketing and promotion plan for the yachting subsector. You know what is happening? God has given us a safe, hurricane-free marine environment. And a number of yachties are going to Grenada instead of Trinidad and Tobago. So instead of taking advantage of our God-given gifts, this PNM incompetent government is chasing away the talents and access to foreign reserves. But the Minister of Finance also said on yachting, and it pains to go through this, because I am a citizen of this country. I have no citizenship anywhere else. And I want this place to succeed. But by day, I get this sense of hopelessness and despair that a darkness has pervaded our country. The Minister of Finance spoke about a marina development through public-private partnership arrangements in Tobago. Well, I could sit and ask the member for Tobago to tell me if any marina has been developed in Tobago. I give way.
They're coming.
Like everything in the PNM. Like everything in the PNM, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Nothing has happened. Everything is coming and waiting, and we anticipated.
Next movie.
But Mr. Deputy Speaker, it gets worse. It is sad. It almost makes me feel to fall in tears, because this is my beloved country in whom I love and am well pleased. Yes. He spoke about the creative industry. He talked about the creative industry. In the music sector, the Minister of Finance, he said in the music sector, we will implement an artist portfolio development program which will support artists who are on the verge of becoming export ready by leveraging their creative talents on a worldwide market. I asked them who, when, and where has this been developed? And it had to be so sad that I had to listen to Crow singing and saying that he can't even get an answer to a telephone call because no doubt promises are made with no intention whatsoever to deliver. Broken promises, broken government promises. P&M 2015 manifesto, they talked about the creation of highly productive jobs which paid decent salaries and which allowed the middle class in the society to expand. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we created 50,000 jobs, and they have lost their heading for the record of jobs we created. They are created to take away 50,000 jobs from this economy by the time they demit office in 2020. And their first strategy, as always, is to blame the People's Partnership Government. And this has morphed, Mr. Deputy Speaker, into the Prime Minister blaming the late Mr. Manning for the delay in completing housing projects. It has morphed then from first for criticizing us, and when they realize that that is not working, they criticize their own members of the party. And it has moved now to blame the energy sector, partially for the challenge in collecting revenues. The energy minister stated at the Spotlight on Energy conference that, and I quote, in other jurisdictions, upstream companies paid taxes of 53% on gross revenues, but the same company paid much less in Trinidad and Tobago. So they're now looking for people to blame for their own incompetence.
As usual. Blame everybody.
But I wish to draw attention to the fact that we had a vision in which we saw diversification as a key ingredient of development. And we gave them on a platter the National Cycling Center. Yeah. By now, if we were in charge, that would have earned millions of dollars of foreign exchange. And the National Aquatic Center. And I heard somebody from Canada, one of the swimmers, say this is as good as any in the world. Such we did for that for Trinidad and Tobago. So you give them things and they can't work it. They can't make it turn into dollars and cents. Because all they're doing, they can't monetize. Good word. Because all they're concerned is casting blame and inefficient management. I'll get to that. We're talking about the construction sector. In 2012, 1 year after we came into office, 2012, there were 95,100 persons employed in the construction sector. In 2013, see progress with us. We moved from 95,000 to 99,000. Guess what happened in 2016? It went down to 91,200. And in 2017, last year, and this is Central Bank quarterly report, 82,800. So there has been a decrease of 12,300 workers in the construction industry between 2012, when we were in power, and 2017. And they turn around and they tell us no loss of jobs, with a straight face, like they tell us there's no suffering in Tobago. But I want to tell them, all of us on this side and that side went to school. We passed for our first choice. Yes, not us? Naparima College, in my instance. Best all-around student in 1968. We had a broad walk in Chagaramas, a tourist attraction. We had the Children's Hospital in Couva to create jobs in the health sector and increase health standards. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is immoral that there are people in Naparima constituency waiting a year for MRIs when their first world state-of-the-art equipment rotten in the Couva Hospital. It is immoral. Our taxpayers' money paid for that equipment. At least if you don't like the UNC and you don't want us to get the credit, sneak away and take 4 persons from San Fernando General, send them there, the MRI people, and send them there to do MRIs and CT scans for the citizens of the country.
Medical tourism also.
And my colleague is reminding me that it was medical tourism. Bring in CARICOM people who are ill and cannot get those facilities in the way they go to Cuba. And in the way Trinidadians go to Miami and all over the world. We could have been earning foreign exchange, employing doctors, and having a worthwhile development in our country. What we have not heard from those opposite are any instances where they have executed their professed plans to diversify the economy. You can go to the IMF. You can look at travel advisories in terms of the decline in investments. The OECD and the EU, and I want to talk about that. Foreign direct inflows declined in the Caribbean, although with significant variation across countries. This is the World Investment Report 2017 by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. It says, inflows in the Caribbean, excluding financial sectors, dipped 9% in 2016 to $3 billion. This was largely, and I'm reading slowly now, this was largely the result of a swing to net divestment in Trinidad and Tobago, reflecting the closure of the Point Lisas facility of ArcelorMittal and lower reinvestments of earnings in the energy sector. So the world magazines are acknowledging that there has been a significant decline in investments, foreign direct investments in Trinidad and Tobago. And may I say, during our time, it was the highest ever recorded in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. I read in the Daily Express, June 14, 2017, Alim Khan, and it says, it was the first time in 4 years, they're quoting this report, and saying, it was the first time in 4 years Trinidad and Tobago suffered a negative foreign direct investment inflows of minus $60 million US. What? We are in negative territory. Put in layman's terms, more foreign investors pull money out of Trinidad than put money into our economy. Where are we going? Forget all the old talk and the fancy kerchief and pocket and nice talk. At the end of the day, facts do not lie, tell us. The facts do not fool us. Facts are stubborn things. And it says, the gas law conference at the Hilton Hotel recently, and this talking 2017, BPTT and EOG, and when they're saying rig days fluctuated as far back as the Energy Ministry data show, but fell 31% to 1,906 in 2016 versus 2015. So rig days dropped in the time of the PNM, and they will want to come and tell us that whenever they can't blame us, they come and obfuscate and dance. And when you go back and research, you realize we're being fooled. We're being taken for a ride. So the World Investment Report 2017, investment in the Dominican Republic increased by 9% to US $2 billion. We dropped. I want to make reference to something I did before. And it has to do with the OECD 2017 report. It said, Trinidad and Tobago, the country was the only country among 142 jurisdictions deemed non-compliant on our ability to meet the automatic exchange of tax information standard. That's the OECD.
Remember, let's quote your source, please.
Yes, that's the OECD
you didn't quote
2017 report.
Okay.
And I had sent out a release which said that the report, it is the same with the OECD report. It blacklisted our country, and it is the brief on the state of play on the international tax transparency standards. And it said, the OECD, that our country, like many others, was subject to a fast-track review. This fast-track review occurred during the time when the PNM was in government in 2016. A fast-track review. We were the only country among 142 jurisdictions deemed non-compliant. In the beginning of the review, because they like to say that we were the cause of the problem. But at the beginning of the review, Guatemala, the Federated States of Micronesia, Marshall Islands, and Panama were also deemed non-compliant. So even if we did nothing, and all of us line up for this review, you had on one side Panama, you had Guatemala, you had Micronesia, you had Marshall Islands. They moved during the period of review from non-compliant to partially compliant or fully compliant. Why did we not, and how could you blame the People's Partnership Government for that? The Attorney General, the Honorable Faris Alwari, said Trinidad and Tobago, he said this in Hansard, January 12th, in response to my stating this thing. And I want to reiterate, the review period was during the time when the PNM was in government. And he says, and this is where we have to be careful, distortion of facts. Trinidad and Tobago is non-compliant on the Global Forum because the last government did nothing to put us into compliance. Correct. End of quote, Hansard, January 12th. So if we did nothing, assuming but not admitted that we did nothing, what did you do when you were in government? And what did the Marshall Islands do that you did not do? It gets worse. It gets worse, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The EU blacklisting. After the December 2017, the EU wrote all these governments who were blacklisted in the CARICOM. And they asked us to give a high-level commitment. A high-level commitment that we will put in place legislation to become compliant. But guess what? Guess what? Our country, our Grenada, so we were all in the race to come off the blacklisting. They wrote Grenada, they wrote Barbados, they wrote Trinidad and Tobago, and say, give us a high-level commitment that you will put things in place. That was all that was required. Grenada did it. Barbados did it. Trinidad and Tobago, based on the information we have for the EU, did not write the letter of commitment. And I ask, why were we not taken off for the list when the only requirement was a letter of commitment?
Member, Honorable AG, there's a procedure of how you can respond. Member for Naparima, your initial 30 minutes has expired. You have an additional 15. You care to avail yourself of those 15 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Kindly proceed.
Of course. Of course. You know, I am now dealing with the woes that we are suffering. And I just see the island heading for a shutdown. If the member for Tobago East were here, this is Tobago News, Friday, March 16, 2018. Rosemary Sant. Some 34 businesses have already closed their doors in Tobago because of the crisis on the sea bridge in the past year. And more have indicated they're on the brink of closure. So, Lord, tell me, if it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, then it must be a duck. The construction sector, we have the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Contractors Association, Ramlogan Rupnarayan Singh. He said, when they speak, they talk about projects that were happening and will happen. So far, nothing is happening. He added, no new projects have really started. Regarding the proposal for the public-private partnership, he said, the Minister of Finance talked about housing projects, but so far, nothing has happened with that. Who they fooling? Who are you fooling? You could fool us in Parliament. But performance beats all talk. Anytime. Truckers lament continued sea bridges using bad business.
Member, again, please, in terms of the displaying of your items.
Large businesses will survive and the small will die. And it says Dr. Valmiki Arjun is predicting the survival of only large businesses as the business sector is set to decline, further contract, given the recent leveling of taxes outlined in the 2018 budget. So we have the truckers complaining in Tobago. We have the UTT Sapa campus closed. We have small business shouting, bawling for help. The Caribbean Nitrogen Company being literally forced to leave the country. ArcelorMittal said we had enough of this PNM government, we're gone. The government stops the highway project in Point Fortin more or less. And CPEP is a disaster in intensive care. Trinidad and Tobago Global Entrepreneurial Index points. We are decreasing in global entrepreneurship. The Global Entrepreneurship Index compiled by the Global Entrepreneurship and Development Institute measures the health of the entrepreneurship ecosystems in each of 137 countries. It collects data on entrepreneurial attitudes, abilities, and aspirations of local population, and then weighs these against the prevailing social and economic infrastructure. In 2014, when we were there, we had 30.3 points. We are now down to 24.4 and decreasing. We have underperformance in the national security sector. So, Deputy Speaker, the only growth industry in Trinidad is funeral homes. And I will direct the Minister of Finance, if he wants to raise money, to tax the funeral homes, because the murder rate is increasing. We're dying and suffering, and that there's money to be made there. Don't tax me and the property, tax the funeral. But the cost of crime in this country is estimated at $10 billion annually. We have the cost of funeral homes. If we have 500 murders at 20,000 each murder, that excludes families flying down. It's conservative. That's 10 million, right? We have the national security budget, 6.2 billion. We have the health cost of all those who got shot, what do we call collateral damage. We have loss of external investments, people who ain't coming to Trinidad because they're afraid to come in under this PNM government. We have the tourism cost, and my colleague from Couva North, she spoke about the significantly reduced arrivals. 4 million in Jamaica, and we less than 500,000. We should be ashamed. We have the business cost of security guards, CCTV, etc. When I was at National Petroleum, I was the marketing manager, and I started the C-stores, the convenience stores. Then I realized that the cost of having us armed security guard at that time was $40 a day, $40 an hour. $40 an hour multiplied by 24 hours was the cost that we had to, before we sold a sweetie. Tulum was my colleague, the Minister of Industry and Trade. A sugar plum. We had to recoup close to $40 times 24 hours. We have burglar-proof costs, 9.3 million, 30,000 per household for 80% of the households in Trinidad. CCTV, 93 million. Blink, 936 million. GPS alarm systems on cars, etc., to get back your cars. The psychological cost, the loss of breadwinners in home, the incompetence of that government is costing this economy more than $10 billion annually. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is easy for them. It was Friedman who said, if I'm spending my own money on myself, I am most careful. If I'm spending somebody else's money on me, I will spend. I will have a great time. But if I'm spending somebody else's money on somebody else, I do not care, because it's not my money. And I'm not the person giving the money. I'm not the recipient of the goodwill. So therefore, that's Milton Friedman. That is what this government is doing. Their policy is tax, and waste. If I was spending my own money, Mr. Speaker, I would be more careful than this government. Would I spend $400 million on a useless highway? Would I rent one Alexandra place at $700,000 a month when I have an office, the Ministry of Agriculture, that is empty? I have the Ministry of Education that has been recited to St. Vincent Street. That is empty on Alexandra Street. And so we have 2 buildings empty. Would I spend rent of $700,000? And I estimate it takes 2 years of my salary to pay 1 month's rent. That is wastage. And while it could have occurred when we had money in the time of plenty, at this stage it is immoral for us to be spending that kind of money on one Alexandra place. So we have employment figures. Agriculture, it was 22,000, petroleum and gas. They lost 5,300 jobs, according to the Central Bank Economic Bulletin in March 2018. We lost 5,000 jobs since our time to their time. Manufacturing, We had 51,000 jobs. Now it's 49,700, a decrease of 1,300. In construction, a decrease of 12,300 jobs. According to the Central Bank Economic Bulletin, employment, the participation rate, and I think my friend, my colleague from Caroni Central indicated that we have the lowest participation rate. And the unemployment rate of 4.5% is the highest it has been since 2012. We talk about the sectors, agriculture. Naparima constituents continue to suffer if agriculture is seen as a sector which we will diversify. Naparima constituents suffer due to lack of drainage and resultant floods. One of my constituents, Mr. Liaquat Dowlat, the owner of Dowlat Farms, located at number 4 South Oropuch Road, Guljar Road, Barakpur. Mr. Dowlat's chicken farm prior to June 20th, passing of the tropical storm Brett, housed 24,000 chicks with an estimated value of $230,000. There's a river that is located next to his farm, which requires dredging. I have written the Honorable Clarence Rambarat, Minister of Agriculture, on the 24th of August 2017. No reply. I sent it by registered mail. So not even acknowledgement. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there is a cry among the poor. There are a cry among people who want to contribute to the development of this country. But that government, I'm almost in tears. That government has decided that they will not even acknowledge and support the suffering people who do not ask for handouts. They ask for help. We look at our energy situation where we could diversify. I ask the question, where is the strategic energy plan for relations with Guyana? No plan. No plan. We had recently the Spotlight on Energy conference. Talk shop. And a talk shop. Right? Guyana is scheduled to produce 500,000 barrels of oil per day in the next 2 years. It is a fellow CARICOM country. And they want us to leverage our skills and competence and finance so that we will have jobs for citizens laid off in our energy sector. But at that said conference, the talk shop, the CEO of Venturing Petroleum Company, a state-owned company in Suriname, next door to Guyana, he pleaded with our Minister of Energy to make, quote, Trinidad and Tobago's intent to collaborate more concrete. They're begging us to come and help them. They have the oil. We only produce 70,000 barrels. Guyana has 500,000 barrels per day. Petrotrin imports close to 90,000 barrels a day. There may be issues with the sweet crude and the type of crude, but these things could be worked out. So the question is, we should be offering petroleum scholarships at UE St. Augustine to Guyanese and Surinamese energy personnel to develop necessary contacts and improve their capabilities. We should be training their drillers at our MIC Institute of Technology schools. And NESC. Minister of Fazal Kaimi trained Nigerians at our schools, at our drilling schools. And there's a drilling school in my constituency. Why are we not bright? The Canadians and British and New Zealanders give scholarships to African countries. In fact, China is now doing that. China is setting up a school so they will bring engineers and whatnot from the third world so they will know about the Chinese technology. When they return to their countries, there will be that nexus and that link and that relationship. Why can't we not use our brains? So while in the boardrooms of major energy companies like ExxonMobil and Hess, strategic plans are in play for Guyana's energy. And while Petrobras is on the south monitoring, Petrobras is on the south monitoring, and while Venezuela is casting a menacing eye on Essequibo, We in Trinidad are just sitting down waiting for God to put it in our lives. This PNM government cannot...
May I ask what article you're quoting from? I saw you reading. What article is it?
Knowledge. It's knowledge. It's knowledge. It's knowledge.
Some media release.
And so I asked the question, where are
Sorry,
our...
if it's a media release, can you say what?
Date?
Date and so on?
Oh, yes.
Thanks.
Oh, yes. For the records, March 15, 2018. Yeah. And it's in the public domain. So you could go to any media and they will give it to you. And I'll give you it. I'll give you a copy afterwards. But the question...
In a certain fashion.
Yeah, the question is, I am asking this government, where is the strategic plan
it's a media
and
release
what
from
are the
whom?
main elements? What's standing order, Mr. Speaker?
I'm not understanding order. It's a media release from whom?
It's a media release from me.
Yes.
So I am asking, through the media release, is where is our strategic plan and its main elements?
Correct.
What are our goals regarding our energy relations with Guyana? Who are our point persons?
Remember, you have 2 more minutes.
Where is the dedicated team of local experts strategizing to leverage our energy expertise to help both Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago? What are the possible areas of engagement that meet both country needs? A successful partnership with Guyana can increase revenues for Petrotrin, provide employment for Trinidad and Tobago experienced energy workers who have lost their jobs. Options should be pursued regarding joint ventures in shipping and transport and Trinidad and Tobago investments in Guyana's industrial sector. Yes. But that requires brain power that does not exist on that side. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to end by saying that we have 2 more years of government in that side. We are heading, all the indicators, all the indices point that we are heading in a direction that will change the course of Trinidad and Tobago towards a Haitianized future. And I am saying that I plead with them to collaborate with us. Yes. We are patriots too. We want to help. But you cannot come in Parliament and be arrogant and talk down to us and tell us that we are unpatriotic. We don't know what we're talking about. Stay out of parts of Trinidad and Tobago. We will not. So long as I have my leader, Ms. Kamala Prasad-Visasa, the member for Separia, we will rescue Trinidad and Tobago come 2020. And I tell my fellow citizens, fear not. The future is nigh. We will save Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
Maruga, Tableland. Members, again, each member will have their opportunity. I now recognize the member for Maruga, Tableland, and I'd like to listen to his discourse, so please, silent.
So, Deputy Speaker, good afternoon. I venture the same to members on both sides of this House. It's my pleasure to stand to contribute on this motion. And I'd like to start by thanking my colleague, the member for Tobago East, for sparing me the cruelty and anguish of having once again to respond to the member for Couva North. I was thankful for her intervention. Unfortunately, that left me speaking after the very loud and bombastic and ultimately very empty member for Naparima. And I could make the error of going down, well, toe to toe, responding to the very little of substance, as he said. But that is a cul-de-sac. It's a waste of time. And I do not intend to waste the time allotted to me in the Parliament. The member for Chaguanas East has raised by his motion a very compelling and interesting issue. But it is symptomatic of the UNC, in general, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that even when raising something that has some meat, that is worthy of discussion, that the level of discourse is so trite, so empty, so pointless, so vapid, so very juvenile, that they undermine their very own motion. So it is my purpose this afternoon to add some gravitas, to add some weight, to add some sense as a counter-narrative to the narrative of doom and gloom and pointlessness that we have heard. And I will attempt to do that. Because the issue of diversification, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is a compelling one at the moment. It is something talked about throughout the length and breadth of this nation, Trinidad and Tobago. It is something that the typical citizen is very concerned with. In fact, this word is perhaps one of the most popular words in the local lexicon right now. It matters. But there is an issue here, and whether advertent or inadvertent, raised by the member for Chaguanas East, that must be dissected. We have been independent for 50+ years. We've been talking about, thinking about, attempting to diversify our economy for a number of years. No one here will argue that it has gone exactly to plan, and that rests on both parties in this House. Because the issue of diversification stands astride petty politics, because it works to the benefit of the nation, and it's something that we really need to investigate properly. And one of the errors we have made, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in terms of discussing this issue, is that we've left the discourse largely to social scientists. And many of our social scientists, even those with names and letters behind their names, really lack the historical knowledge to make the kinds of pronouncements they made. So in many ways, this remains something that we have not fully understood in a meaningful way. And the old adage holds, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that if you do not understand the problem, it is very difficult to find the solution. And I just heard the member for Tabakit quipping about a history lesson. Well, one of the problems we have in our society is that we have not learned enough from the history. So the history lessons are apt and meaningful. And rather than talking in very loud terms about things I don't understand, like the member for Naparima, it is best I put a context to the thing so that even if the members opposite do not learn or do not understand, then the wider public has a better understanding of the issues at hand. So perhaps the history lesson is very apt. So, Deputy Speaker, it will be short, it will be to the point. The question is this: we are talking about diversification. We need to understand, on the one hand, this is a process. The very writing of the motion, and for this I do not blame the member for Chaguanas East, because given the template that must be used in this parliament, whereas, it reads a certain way over which you have no control. That's the way it's written. But even the wording of the motion points to a misapprehension of what diversification is. Asking government to just come with a plan to diversify just like that, as though this thing is just abracadabra, happens instantly. This is a process. Takes years, takes decades, sometimes takes generations. And it works best, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when there is a level of continuity, meaning even if governments change, as a nation we decide that there are some processes in our development that are so fundamentally important that they continue. So it should not be that we should have to come ad hoc and come up with a new plan. It should be that there is an ongoing plan, because there are things so fundamentally important to our development that they continue. And even if there are differences in policy, when the new government comes in, they pick up and continue. That is not the case. That is not the case. So it is the case that we need to have a plan. It is also the case that we have a plan. But it is also the case that fundamentally, if we've tried this for generations and it has not worked in the way that we want it to, that we get beyond the loudness, we get beyond the bombast, and we do something fundamental to push forward our economic development. There is a problem here that is central to the fact that we have not done this correctly. And the problem is not resting in the theories of social scientists. The problem resides, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in our particular history. And it's very simple. We need to understand economic development in the Caribbean unlike any other place on this planet. Very unique phenomenon. There is a very simple pattern of development you will see everywhere else in the world, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Caribbean has it totally opposite. In every other part of the world, even those that were affected by colonial intrusion, you had a very simple economic pattern of development. You had, Mr. Deputy Speaker, a society that emerged through whatever mechanism. And that society created economic relations. In the Caribbean, this did not happen. It did not happen because the society that existed here that could have allowed that to happen was wiped out within half a century by people who invaded here because they wanted to push forward their economic development in a very zero-sum game. For a very long time, we've taught a kind of fairy tale history in the Caribbean about people coming here to explore, people coming here to discover. It's remarkably nonsensical. So, Deputy Speaker, the people who invaded the Caribbean at the end of the 15th century, they were going through their own economic changes, their own societal changes, for which they wanted resources, and they left their homes to go anywhere that they could find it. And they stumbled across this region. But the point is this. The Spanish came here first, and they entrenched themselves where they found wealth in a way that they understood. They found gold and silver, precious metal. The Dutch stayed on the seas to trade. So, Deputy Speaker, when the English and the French got here, they couldn't find wealth in a way that they understood culturally. What they had to do was to reconceptualize what wealth meant to them. And they were the first people to look at agricultural production as something that created wealth. So they created something in this region called commercial arable agriculture. The impact of that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, was that in the Caribbean, we did not have that normal growth pattern where society evolved and it created economic systems. What we had was the opposite, which was an economic system was imposed, and that created the society. And that has ramifications that are still with us today. That's why, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you look at every single Caribbean territory, their economies, despite whatever good or services they produce, they are remarkably consistent. That's why, for most of the history of the territories in this nation, in this region, we've been reliant on one kind of economic activity, something we produced that was viable at the time, that was able to be taken to produce wealth, to be transported across the Atlantic to Europe. Our economies were created to make Western Europe rich. There was no thought, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as to whether our societies could survive. There was no thought as to whether our economies could survive. There was no concern. The idea was to produce something valuable, take the wealth and take it overseas, and the rest did not matter. Our economies were not built to last. Our societies were not built to last. We were created for one purpose, which was to create wealth to take across the ocean. The fact that we have lasted, Mr. Deputy Speaker, comes down to the fact that as Caribbean people, we have been trying our very best for the last century to rewrite this part of our economic DNA. And it's a very difficult thing. This is one of the fundamental reasons why many Caribbean territories, every Caribbean territory, every Caribbean society has been trying to diversify. Some harder than others, some more consistently than others, but having great difficulties to do so. This paradox is in our economic DNA. It remains a compelling problem. And in Trinidad, because we started later it has been tremendously stark. Whereas the other territories were producing sugar for 100 years, we were 100 years behind. We started in sugar. For a while, it was successful. We went to cocoa, very short success period. Then we found oil. but the paradigm has been the same. We've always had one thing that we could depend on, and then we were to be dependent on everything else. So we produced something raw we could sell, and then we would import food, and we always were meant to be a dependent society, a dependent economy. And that is our problem. That is our concern. That is the thing that we must fix in order to diversify. This is no easy task. We have tried this process for decades. In the 1980s, when things were like now, they were going south economically, we tried to diversify. Caroni was the center of that project. And it worked in a very small way. But ultimately, one has to understand the constraints contained herein. If you are accustomed to having one very large, very lucrative economic activity that basically holds up your economy, it is very difficult to transform that or to move away from that and start to look at very small things, making dollars here, to supplement the income you will lose. It's very difficult. Caroni used to invest $800 million a year in sugar production. They would bring in $500 million in foreign exchange to the country, which was valuable. They'd lose $300 million, every year. And you know what? They said what? Move away from that. We're going to start rice, buffalo so et al., citrus, and many of them were successful. But how do you replace that large sum of money when you invest $10 million in rice and you recoup $11 million and you make $1 million profit? At the end of the day, even when successful, diversified industries usually bring in small revenue. The gestation period is long. The time taken is great. It doesn't happen overnight. And there's always a temptation to look at the large tentpole industry that gives you the kind of economic activity you're accustomed to. So, Deputy Speaker, this remains central to our problem. But conversely, it is very erroneous for any member on the opposing side to stand and contend that this government has not in any fundamental way attempted to diversify the economy of this country. And if you permit me, sir, to be parochial, I could give you some cogent examples of the ways in which there's an attempt to do it right now that is ongoing. Everyone knows that I'm a member of Parliament from Muruga Tableland. I have said here ad nauseum over and over about how underdeveloped it is traditionally and historically. I have also said that this is the first time in living history that a government has stood up and attempted to make a meaningful intervention in my constituency in terms of providing it with some kind of economic base for development. And that's important. When you look at this nation, Sir Deputy Speaker, aside from extraction, mining, oil refining, whatever, et al., economic activity has been localized on the western half of the island, Naparima Plain, Caroni Plain, or along the east-west corridor. There are parts of Trinidad and Tobago, the whole eastern half, large parts of the southern area that remain remarkably untapped. Our intention on this side is to open up a number of areas that have been underserved, that have been underused, that can add to the overall national development and bring them into the fold so that they contribute more meaningfully to the overall national development. And Muruga is a prime example of that. At the moment right now, we are undergoing for the first time in living history a serious road upgrade. If you're talking geography, a geographer would refer to that as adding communication, which is a major part of encouraging development. But there are other issues herein. There is a plan to be started very soon to build an agro-processing plant. And I have heard questions in various areas about the wisdom of doing that in Muruga. But that speaks to a certain kind of ignorance about parts of our country. So, Deputy Speaker, there are a few unique products specific to Moruga that have great economic potential, that have great potential to add to that mix that is going to diversify the economy of this nation. And I can talk about a few. There is something now, and I'm sure my colleague from Mayaro is familiar with it, that is a bit of a talking point in this country. There's something called Moruga Hill Rice. I'm sure you've heard of it. Yes. Recently, there was a New York Times article about this product. And they talked about rediscovering something that had been lost for a century. It's not true. It's been there all along. Deputy Speaker, up until I became a parliamentarian, I had a friend who had acreages, and he planted Moruga Hill Rice. And if I was off on a day from UWI, I would go and assist him. So I've actually physically myself planted this hill rice, and I've also reaped this hill rice. And in the local scale, it's a very lucrative thing. The grinding of this thing, of this hill rice, has traditionally been a very ad hoc thing. So when you grind the rice, it's actually broken. And I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. So, Deputy Speaker, but this rice is very lucrative. It retails right now at something like $35 to $40 a pound. So if you had to buy 10 pounds of that, I mean, that's a significant chunk of money. And then you have to know how to cook it, and then there are local dishes that go with it, and it's a delicacy. And it has potential. 1, it's organic. 2, it's remarkably healthy. 3, it's indigenous. It has a niche for it because there's a large Moruga diaspora in London. There's one in New York. And there is demand for this. But this thing has been sitting there. No one has branded it in abeyance for a long while. All of a sudden, it has become a hot-button issue in the community, so much so that there is now a farming cooperative. There is talk of having a symposium because the rice has potential. You add to that mix this agro-processing plant, and something which was something that was ad hoc, something that was done in a very arbitrary manner, now has a chance to have greater purchase and has added value, potentially. Another good example of a particular product is the Moruga scorpion pepper. I have been telling people, had I not opted to get into this career, I'd be a millionaire. Because this pepper is renowned world over. But there is no brand associated with it. I think some local companies are now making a kind of pepper with it, adding it to it. And I've been warning my colleague from Port of Spain South, and this pepper is as hot as it is tasteless, but it is the potential for it because it has a universal name. Yeah, it has a universal name, but no one has branded it. There is tremendous potential for this. Exactly. So, Deputy Speaker, we have a local cure in Moruga for the cold. We call it Pete. What happens, you have the cold, a bad cough, they mix a little punch-in. Yeah, some punch-in, some forest park. And you take 2 sips, and it's almost frighteningly and literally a cure for all. Yeah. So, Deputy Speaker, the larger point is, out of this, and I see the doctor from San Juan, very intrigued, might put you out of business, sir. No, I'm much better dressed, thank you. So, Deputy Speaker, the larger point is this. Out of this rural community, there are a number of unique products that have potential, that have been localized in the rural area, but they have potential nationally, they have potential regionally. What has been lacking has been an investment that allows them to corner whatever market they can and to reach the kind of potential they can. And the same goes for the fishing industry in Moruga. Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you go down to Moruga, you go down to Larafin, you go down to Moruga Beach, which is Grand Chame Beach, you will find the greatest number of fishing boats in Trinidad and Tobago. On a very poor day, You can literally find 150 fishing boats operating out of the Muruga River, the largest fishing fleet in all of Trinidad and Tobago. The government's plan is to, of course, provide them with a class fishing port, which will begin in a few months from now. Revitalizing. Member Point of Prayer, you are always very helpful. Thank you, sir. We'll note that. So, Deputy Speaker, these industries have potential. They have potential to provide livelihoods to the people of the community. They have potential to add to the nation's GDP. Any cursory examination of what agriculture and fishing adds to our economy gives you a very abysmal figure. But much of that is owed to the fact that we have not tapped into the potential of a number of our rural communities that can add value. How do we talk about diversification? It's not just about looking at tourism and the other areas that we always talk about. It is oftentimes also allowing other parts of the country that have historically not been afforded the kind of investment to allow them to participate and to add to the national thrust to be allowed to do so. So it's not just about talking about the tourism and talking about the agriculture. It's also about looking at those areas that have potential, and I mean geographically, that can add to the national pie. So, Deputy Speaker, there is no intent on my behalf to stand and suggest that diversification is a simple process, as has been illustrated by those on the other side. That you will come in with a plan and abracadabra, you will accomplish this thing overnight. It is a process. It takes time. Diversified industries have gestation periods. It will take a number of years before any of them have the kind of economic input or output that makes them viable on one hand, and on the other hand, able to contribute to the nation's economic well-being. These things are procedural. What we really need to have in this nation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is a kind of mature governance which says, even if my party is the adversary of your party in the parliament, we understand that there are parts of our development that are so critical that there is continuity. Were it the case that we had encountered anything of value, Mr. Deputy Speaker, from those on the other side, we would have continued it for the betterment of the nation. That's what responsible governance is about. We are in the midst, right now, of trying to put a shattered vase back together. And we do that for the continuance of the nation. If by some disaster in 2020, the whole nation gets amnesia and the UNC returns to power, they would be responsible. They would only be considered responsible if they continue the measures that we have put in place. That's how responsible governance works. If it is that both sides of this House can contend that we need a more diversified economy in terms of our export earning, and that diversification is fundamentally important to the continued development of this nation, it must transcend the cut and thrust of petty politics. So, Deputy Speaker, we will only diversify this nation's economy when we understand, and this is not a situation where bombast, an argument, and shouting is the currency that is needed. When we understand that sober planning, long-term thinking, patience, and definitive government is required, we will accomplish this task. It is our intent to take the nation's diversification and its development forward as far as we can in the time that we have. But I trust in the wisdom of Trinidadians and Tobagonians, and I trust that despite all the noise we hear on the other side and all the doomsday predictions, those with crystal balls or obia balls or different kinds of ways of observing the future or imagining the future as they would like to see it, that this government will continue to diversify, and post-2020 we will be here to continue the good work we have started. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
I recognize the member for Tabakit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to participate in what I consider to be a most important debate. A most important debate in that we have to look at diversification side by side with what is happening to our reserves of oil and gas. And if we cannot plan to achieve a level of diversification that will result in substitution to earn the amount of foreign exchange we need to earn, which will be lost by the depleting reserves of oil and gas, then we are going to be in great difficulty. And I think that it is extremely important, therefore, that we focus on the areas that we can immediately do something about increasing our foreign exchange. The idea of diversification also has to do with sustainable jobs. I heard the honorable member from Aruga Tableland said that when they came into office, they didn't encounter anything of value while you were speaking about the continuity in government. Well, it has been said here in the Parliament, but just let me repeat it. One of the areas that we were looking towards in terms of earning foreign exchange and at the same time improving the potential of our own people by having them interact with international sports personalities was through the building of the National Cycling Center, the Aquatic Center, the Tennis Center, the Couva Hospital. So I cannot understand what he means by saying that he didn't encounter anything of value. Because sports tourism, let us face it, sports tourism is a very lucrative area. The problem is that the People's National Movement does not have the capacity, like my friend from Naprima said, to monetize these things, to monetize them, and to add value to them. And that is why you had a situation where at one time we were hearing about the aquatic center, the pool got green. You know, it shows you that they have no sense of value.
Neglect.
And about neglect, and the neglect is all about it, all over. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in listening to the member from Aruga Tableland, I got a litany of excuses as to why we are where we are in this country. I love history. I really love history. And I think that history has a lot to teach. But you cannot be so grounded in the past that you become visionless about the future. And that is the problem. The PNM lacks a vision. Every time they speak, it is about blaming somebody for something. This is why we are where we are. It's about blaming history, blaming the colonizers, blaming what? When are we going to stop blaming and begin to take responsibility, which is what the People's Partnership Government was doing? The People's Partnership Government took responsibility to the extent that we were able to bring in foreign exchange at a phenomenal rate in terms of investments into the country. And if I recall correctly, we were bringing in about, from 2012, about 1.5 billion US dollars a year. Dr. Tiwari will remember that. And what has happened to that? What the PNM government should be asking, why has foreign exchange, foreign direct investment dried up in Trinidad? Why has it dried up? Why has it dried up? Is it because people are losing confidence in this country? Is it because people are losing confidence in this country? If you continue on the vein that they are going, that everybody is a thief, and everybody, and when you say that, you not only talk about your own people, you talk about everybody coming into your country. If you go and attack people and tell them you're not paying enough taxes rather than negotiate with them in a very decent manner, or you tell people, take up your platform and go, what do you expect to happen in Trinidad and Tobago? Diversification requires an input. Diversification requires, and the PNM didn't tell Roger that he was making a mistake.
Silence, members.
Diversification requires, in my view, in this country also, a review of our migration policy.
Yes, yes.
This, in lots and lots of countries, they have succeeded because of the quality of the entrepreneurs they have been able to bring, along with not just the money, but also the attitude towards entrepreneurship. And we need to look at that. We must not fear migrants. We must look to see what they can bring at a time when we need to add value to our experience and to our economy. And somehow, we are not looking at those things. So there's a whole environment that has to be created for this. And the People's Partnership government was doing that. When Mitsubishi came here with Nilan Masi and what have you and set up that project, it is because we had gone to Japan and spoken to the chamber and spoken to Mitsubishi and spoken to all of those people. And for the first time in 19 years, the Japanese government sent an investment mission to Trinidad. You have to go out there and market your country and market what you have. You know, there's a very beautiful book I'm reading, and my colleague is reading it also. It's called Singapore and Switzerland, Secrets to Small State Success. And in the very first page of this book, there's a really good question asked, just in about 5 or 6 words. What makes a small state succeed?
Yeah.
What makes a small state succeed? And it's a question that Trinidad and Tobago has to ask. Because in this book also, you will see when statistics were done, in and about 2014, that is when we were in office, one of the interesting things is in a rating of several countries, including Singapore and Switzerland, to which this book refers, the question was asked of people in Trinidad and Tobago about perceived opportunities. And 58.6% of our people are saying they perceive that the opportunity is here. Perceived capability is 75.2%. And what is interesting, the fear of failure was only 16.8%. So our people are not afraid to go into business. They are not afraid to be entrepreneurs, right? Entrepreneurship as a good career choice, 79.5%. So people have a certain will and they have a certain attitude that they want to go into business on their own and they want to contribute. But if there is not a facilitating environment, which is the job of the government, then you are going to frustrate people. You're going to frustrate people. You can, my colleague from Naparima took the budget speech of 2017, 2018, and he showed after how many months, how much has not been implemented. And if you go back to 2016 and so on, you'll see the same thing. You know, it is very, very distressing. The construction sector, for example, which you could use to revitalize the economy. My colleague showed that the number of people unemployed now has gone up in terms of from 12,000 more persons unemployed in the construction sector. In a country in which so many people want houses. In a country in which so many people want houses. Why are you not doing what you're supposed to do in order to facilitate that? Manufacturing. It's frustrating. And therefore you have to now relook your policies and your policy prescriptions in order to be the facilitator. I read those statistics to show that people are willing in this country, you know. They are willing. But what it is that's frustrating their will in order to do that which they feel they can do. The enabling environment. You know, when the member for Tobago East spoke, she talked about us saying people are suffering in Tobago and what have you. You know, I'm not concerned about whether people are suffering in Tobago, whether they're suffering in Trinidad. That's my concern. You know what my concern as a member of parliament is? And an alternative government is what we're going to do about the suffering. That is what is important. What are you going to do about the suffering? What are the interventions you want to make? You cannot have people on the string that you have them, that the TT Spirit will run on the 22nd, and when the 22nd comes, the TT Spirit isn't running. You cannot do that. And you cannot stand up in this house and try to defend incompetence. incompetence, what you do is you create a delusion. You begin to believe untruths to be truths. Fake news.
Spirit vaporized, man.
You know, the thing is, let's do something about the suffering. And we are capable of doing something about the suffering. Why is it that the country was so economically viable and vibrant under the People's Partnership? Why?
Honourable Member, yeah. On this note, we'd like to suspend for tea, and we will resume at 5